Joy-Cons to the world, for it is Switchmas Day, folks. And thank you for joining us instead of playing your new system and or games. My name is Matthew.
And I'm Chris.
And on this grand day of March 3rd, which we've been looking forward to for a long time, we thought we'd give you our thoughts and feelings so far on the system. Now, Chris, I believe you got the Wii U version of I was about to say Tadpole Trouble. Breath of the Wild, correct?
Yes, I did. It arrived today, but I have not been able to play it yet. So Today we're just going to be talking about your impressions of the Switch and of the Switch version of Zelda.
Sure. Well, let me say thank you for recording this and editing this instead of playing Breath of the Wild, because I think that takes a lot of dedication.
My pleasure.
Well, cool. I'd be happy to talk about my experience. Yesterday, I've been counting down the days and then the hours. Last night I went to the local GameStop where I'd pre-ordered and brought my brother and my friend Ryan, and they both were getting the Wii U version of Zelda. They're gonna wait a little bit on the Switch, and I was getting the Switch as well as Breath of the Wild Special Edition. So we got there, and there was actually a pretty large amount of people in there. I would say maybe 25 people, 25 customers, maybe 25 to 30 customers, actually. They had Smash Brothers set up, which I think they should have all the time, personally, instead of, just put that in front of the Xbox One section or whatever. Just have Smash Brothers constantly running.
Yeah.
People are playing Smash Brothers. I've been kind of hot and cold on GameStop over the past decade or two, but I gotta give them credit for running a pretty smooth Switch launch. When I was there, they actually checked out everyone before midnight and then handed out tickets to so that when midnight rolled around, it was actually pretty quick. Everybody kind of lined up with their receipt, and they had the bags ready to go.
That's a good system.
So we got out at like 12:10 instead of 12:40 or whatever. So I was able to go home, unpack the system, take a good look at it, taste the Breath of the Wild cartridge, which is kind of weird. I think they put some sort of bitter spray agent on there.
Oh, really?
We used to we bought some for Terra, because Terra would bite our cords and stuff, so we sprayed them on the Wii U cords.
Yeah.
And it's just really bitter, it's non-toxic and whatever. But I think the point is to prevent like kids from putting the cartridge in their mouth because it's so small.
Right.
And as a parent of a 1.5-year-old and a 4-month-old, I can appreciate that. It's a nice little touch.
Do they smell like anything?
No, they don't smell like anything. It's funny, though, because everyone knows now that they taste terrible, but they still have to try it anyway, It's like when you go to your friend and say, hey, this milk is horrible, smell this milk. They have to smell it, even though what are you expecting? You're not expecting anything good, but you're just curious.
I don't know. I think I would take your word for it if you...
Oh, okay. Maybe it's just the type of person I am, then.
Maybe.
The cartridge taste.
So you did taste it. What did it taste like?
I taste it. It tasted like earwax. There you go. It's just this weird bitter taste that's it's repellent. It's repulsive. So fortunately the game plays better than it tastes. That's a weird statement. I don't know if I've ever said that. Before I get to Zelda though, let me briefly talk about the Switch. The Joy-Cons are these funky little controllers. They are a little bit smaller than I was expecting, and for the most part I'd say they're pretty comfortable. They're sort of weird in that it doesn't feel like something like let's say the GameCube controller, which was this super ergonomic, like really smooth feeling controller.
Yeah.
It's a little weirder than that. I would kind of put it between maybe the gamepad and maybe the 3DS in terms of overall comfort. When you're using it on the side of the system or in the Joy-Con grip. Joy-Con grip's a little more comfortable because it has kind of this plastic shell around it that sort of fits the contours of your hand. But either way, I find it works well enough. The buttons are kind of small, but I didn't really have any problem, reaching them or clicking them. Every now and then when I was playing Zelda, I would sometimes nudge the right stick, which would open up my inventory, and it would kind of, like in the heat of battle, this would happen. That was really the only issue I had with it. Otherwise, they're pretty neat. Like they can be used in a variety of ways. You've all seen the trailers. You could put them on the side, you could put them on the Joy-Con grip, you can turn them, horizontally, and so on and so forth. And the Switch itself is a really nice screen. It's 720p. It looks a lot clearer and a lot brighter than the Wii U screen. And I mean, jumping from the system to the portable is just it's a really neat experience, a really neat feeling. Not only because you're looking at the same game, and seeing it pretty much exactly how it looks on the TV, but also because it's cool having the same controls, you know? Jumping from Smash Brothers 3DS to Smash Brothers Wii U, you kind of have to adjust to the different controls.
Right.
Unless you used your 3DS as a controller for the Wii U version. I mean, like a weirdo if you want to do that. But otherwise, yeah, you got to jump between them. And this one, you know, it's the same controllers each time, which is neat. So overall, you know, it seems promising. One thing I will say, one criticism I'll have right now is that just everything is kind of bare bones with the UI and everything. It's got a nice clean look and it's very quick and snappy, but you know, there's no real like Netflix mode. There's eShop just barely online. There's not really anything else going on. So I'm hoping they kind of flesh it out over time. But you know, if you bought it to play games, I mean, if you bought it to play Zelda specifically, it'll work for that purpose. And so far, I haven't taken it outside or anything, but I have played in the bathroom. I'm not afraid to admit it. And it works great as a handheld. It reaches across the house, unlike my Wii U. So pretty cool so far. So let's talk about Zelda.
Yeah.
Chris, you got any specific questions?
Well, how far are you? How many hours have you played?
Let's see. I've played about maybe 6 or 7 hours. I had the baby today, and she was a little fussy, so I had to take care of her for a good amount of the day. But when she was napping, I could squeeze in some Zelda time, which was fun. It was something that kind of took me by surprise with Zelda was I was kind of expecting there wasn't any tutorial, and you just are thrust into this world, which is kind of true, but at the same time, there is sort of a tutorial area in that you're kind of gated into the first area until you meet specific requirements. And in that way, it's kind of like the beginning of the Zelda games, like in other 3D Zelda games where you're sort of in this intro area. But it's done way better than those in terms of getting you accustomed to everything. You still have that sense of discovery, like you're going out on forging your own path. It's just kind of a smaller chunk of the world instead of the entire world. But I found after, you know, maybe it depends on what kind of player you are, but between like 3 to 6 hours, you can then reach anywhere in the world pretty much. So, that was kind of a surprising thing.
That area you're referring to is the Great Plateau, right?
Yeah, the Great Plateau, which is kind of, I think it's kind of in the middle-ish of Hyrule, kind of on the southern middle-ish of Hyrule. You can see all these other areas around it from like towers and things, but you can't really reach them until you meet certain requirements. The next thing that kind of took me by surprise was it takes a little bit of getting used to the controls. The Joy-Cons have a lot of buttons with between the two of them, and you pretty much have to make use of all those buttons. Like every one of them does something different, even the little clicky sticks. So this is a complicated game. This is not really like the Nintendo that likes to put something forth that's very intuitive, very easy to use. I mean, it's still intuitive. It still makes sense. It's going to require some practice. I mean, it took me a few hours to really get the hang of what I was doing instead of just throwing weapons and stumbling through my inventory and stuff in the middle of combat.
Is that because of the inventory adding so many different control options there?
The inventory itself has some quick options with the left Joy-Con's buttons, aka the D-pad that's split into 4 buttons, and the right stick when you hold down those buttons goes through the inventory. So it does add a little bit of complication there, but there's also just more stuff that Link can do. You have your sprint button like in Skyward Sword, but you also have a jump button. Whoa! Yeah. You can jump in the game, which is crazy. And in addition to this, you throw your weapons kind of like Wind Waker style. You can throw them at any time, and your bow is always set to a specific button as well. Oh. So your bow is always, I can't remember if it's like ZR or just R. The bigger R button is always set to your bow. So it takes a little bit of reworking, especially if you're like me and you're very familiar with the way 3D Zelda works. The buttons are kind of moved around a little bit, and I mean, don't be surprised to find yourself dying a lot, because I did.
I was watching a few people play the game online, and they were definitely having similar issues. Like they were pressing buttons they didn't mean to. They're like, "Oh, I'm trying to do this thing that I just did, and I forgot how to do it, and I'm in a battle right now." So, I can definitely appreciate that there's that learning curve.
Yeah, it's definitely steeper than the other Zeldas, but that might be because the other Zeldas really painstakingly take you through every step of controlling Link, and this one has more steps. So the good news is you do get acclimated to it, and then with that acclimation comes all these extra options at your disposal when interacting with the world or when climbing things. The good news is you do get more acclimated to these controls, and they give you more options during combat, more options during exploring. There's just a lot more stuff you can do in this game than in past Zeldas. So right now, overall, my impressions are it's a really impressive game. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's really challenging. The wilderness really feels like this kind of oppressive and deadly environment at times. And other times, it's very nice looking game. I think it's very pretty and inviting. But if you go too far off the beaten path, you're gonna find some big monsters, some scary things, and I really appreciate that. Early, Nintendo is kind of infamous for having said that you can storm the castle at the beginning and try to fight the final boss. Unless I'm missing something, like there's some way to sequence break past the Great Plateau at the beginning. I don't know if that's entirely accurate, but it does feel like once you're past the Great Plateau, you can actually do that. I made an attempt, and it did not end well. I didn't even get close to the castle before I got fried by a couple of guardians. So I'd like to get a little further there and see what's actually closer to the castle, because I was still in the wilderness around it. And those guardians with the tentacles, man, they do not mess around. They're one of the most imposing Zelda creatures there are, I think. I mean, if you think about stuff like the Redeads and the Wall Masters from the past games, they have kind of a Metal Gear Solid or a Resident Evil quality to them, where it's like, oh crud, they spotted me, now I gotta run. And you see that laser on you, and it's like, that it's gonna all be over if you get hit by that laser. So
can you get away from the mobile ones?
You can. It's tricky because you have to watch your stamina meter. You have to use your environment creatively. Mm-hmm. If there's like ruins around you or trees or something, you can duck behind a tree. But I mean, once they spot you, you're in big trouble for the mobile ones. You can technically warp away to one of the warp points as well if you're feeling lame, or you could try to hoof it.
You can do that in the middle of combat.
I think so. I'm not 100% sure because I'm not lame. I didn't do it, but you could do it at any other time. So that I guess that remains to be seen. What else? It feels like there's a lot to say about the game. Obviously, I should have prefaced this, but I'm not going to mention any story spoilers or anything I think is sensitive information or anything about the game. Just giving you these early initial impressions. I really like the cooking system. It's sometimes you'll find a pot on top of a fireplace. Normally, when you see a fireplace, you can't actually mix stuff together, but you can drop your items next to the fire, and it'll cook them. If you leave them there, they'll go poof. And if you leave them there too long, they'll poof again and just poof out of existence. So you overcook them. So you can drop apples there, and you'll make baked apples. But your real cooking comes in the form of when you find a skillet that's left on a fire by like some enemies or whatever. And when you see those, you can actually throw several ingredients in the pot. And what's neat about this is that, if you throw in stuff that makes sense, it's going to make something better. It's not like one of those games where it's like, oh, nothing matches, I put in a mushroom and a steak, and for some reason it made a big mess, Yeah. So it's like, if you throw in anything that makes sense, I'll put in some herbs, I'll put in some mushrooms, put in some nuts, put in some apples, you're going to make a delicious meal that's going to restore a lot of hearts.
That's
so
neat.
It's just, and it's got this really great sound design when you're cooking. It's like boom, boom, and so you hear it sizzling. And Link, I think, has actually a lot of personality in his animations and stuff. He'll be shivering when it's cold, and when he eats stuff, he goes and he like slaps his belly, which is very charming. So he's just a fun character to root for. Boy, there's really a lot to say about this game.
So have you gotten to a dungeon that isn't just a shrine?
No, I have not. I'm pretty sure I'm not even close to that. But I found a few shrines. I've tamed a horse, and I found some stables to store the horse. The horse was not listening to me at first. I had to kind of soothe it, and even then it was kind of fighting me with the controls. Eventually, it became my buddy. I decided to name it Isaac because it only listens to me some of the time. So we'll see how Isaac does. Oh, there was this dog in the stables as well, and I pet the dog. Well, actually, I don't know if I pet the dog, but I whistled at the dog and it got happy, and then I fed the dog some meat. And then it ate the meat, so that made me happy. I've noticed a lot of things in this game. If you can think about it, you can usually do it, which is cool. Like if you want to chop down a tree to cross a river on the log, you can do it. If you want to drop apples near a fire, you can do that. You can pick wild stuff and cook it together with other stuff. You can you can snipe at the camps that the enemies have. You can drop boulders on them. There's just I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface of it. I don't want to go too deep into detail because I'm still pretty early, but our next podcast, I think we're gonna tackle Zelda head on and kind of just discuss everything about it that we can. But yeah, overall, so far I'm really enjoying it. I think it's great. Trying to think of any complaints I have. Sometimes it's a little cumbersome to switch your weapons because you have a pretty limited inventory. So, Chris, you may have been onto something with that, with the weapon switching thing.
Yeah.
But there is a quick switch. But I mean, I guess I wish I was a little bit faster. I don't know. I don't know if I have any other real complaints. I will say that the game started off good, but I wasn't really like blown away or anything. But then it just got better and better, especially once I left the opening area and was just kind of free to roam about. I would constantly get sidetracked by stuff. Like I'd have a goal like, all right, this time I'm storming the castle. I'm going to try to see what happens when I attempt to beat the game. And then I kept getting, oh, what's that over there? Ooh, what's that over there? I kept getting sidetracked. And then 30 minutes later, I'm like, what was I doing again? So it's really neat. And these sidetracks are neat little things too. There's like flocks of geese flying around. It's like, what is that? Oh, holy cow. There's wildlife that are roaming about the countryside that you can interact with in different ways. You'll find little chests and stuff. You'll find hidden shrines. So it just feels like a really big world, a lot to do. I'm definitely excited to play more of it.
Now, one thing I'm curious about is whether there are actually significant item upgrades in this game. But since most of the items they have like durability and they'll go away after a while, are there like items you get that are a permanent upgrade that lets you do something new?
Sort of. I almost feel like the replacement for items this time is less in the weapons themselves and more in the runes that you get with the Sheikah Slate, which is interesting because like A Link Between Worlds, they're kind of front-loaded in the game. You get several of these runes early on. And I think they wanted to do that so you can give the player all the tools that they need to explore the world. And so there's less of a sense of, I can't reach that chest yet, I'll come back later. And more like, this chest is hard to reach because this enemy is really scary. So should I fight it now? Or should I come back later when I'm stronger? Or should I cook a potion to make me temporarily stronger? So there's it's neat because it's kind of a new take on the Zelda formula. And, even like the Metroid formula. And that it's less about gating off the player in specific ways and more about making exploration challenging in other ways. It almost feels like a lot of the past Zelda games were digital in puzzle solving. This is more analog. There's more of a gradient to it. There's multiple ways to solve some puzzles. It's very physics based. So it's pretty neat. It's an impressive game, and it's just really fun to explore it and look around and see the world.
Cool. How's the music?
The music's good. It's a little bit low key in that it's kind of in the background a lot. The E3 trailers and stuff are pretty indicative of it. There's not a lot of it, but I really like the new takes on old themes. The piano takes of the do 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 and the do 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 do. They have a few versions of that. They have they have a few other classic themes that I've heard hints of here and there. And every now and then it'll be really bombastic for like a specific cutscene or something. So far I really like it. It adds a lot to the atmosphere. I'm hoping there are a few more melodic tunes, later in the game. But so far, I like what they did with the overworld. It's a pretty neat thing. I want to make mention that there's the really dynamic sense to the music sometimes too. Like at one point, I was riding the horse and it starts going. It starts playing the kind of this peaceful music with this sort of I don't know, like arpeggiating like in the background. And then as I turned a corner and kind of went a little further, I got closer to a guardian who was sort of in the distance. And then he saw me, and all of a sudden the music went into minor key and it went dum, 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 dum. And it was really neat because it was seamless, like this really dynamic kind of thing, where the music it felt like I was like a very cinematic sort of effect where the music was always going to do that anyway. I've seen a few instances of stuff like that where the music is very much in tune to what you're doing.
How's the voice acting?
I haven't heard very much of it. I think I've only heard 2 characters so far. 2 characters? Yeah, I've heard 2 characters, I'm pretty sure. They both sounded okay. One is obviously at the beginning, open your eyes, it's Zelda. And the other is another character that I thought sounded, decent. I haven't really had any major problems with the voice acting yet.
What would you say about the characters so far? Have you met a lot of them?
Actually, yeah, I met a pretty decent amount. In fact, after you leave the Great Plateau, that's when they start reminding you, hey, this is a Zelda game, and you start running into NPCs that are wandering about, which is cool. That it's like they took a little page from Majora's Mask in that way. they're kind of on their routes doing their own thing. And when you talk to them, they do the whole the little Zelda-y sounds, which is charming. And the dialogue is very much in line with the the Treehouse Zelda writing. So far, I've enjoyed the NPCs that I've met. I've met maybe about a dozen different people. I don't know how many of them are like actively involved, like that you'll go back to several times, and see them develop and stuff. That was something I liked a lot about Skyward Sword's Skyloft Residence, was they had these little subplots and stuff, these side quests. But a few of them have had side quests. Like one of them is a pair of treasure hunters. They're like, hey, I heard this treasure. You have to solve this riddle to get this treasure, and we're gonna get this treasure, and they tell you kind of the riddle, and then it becomes a side quest. Like you have to go and see if you can solve that riddle, before these guys do. Obviously, they're probably not gonna actually beat you to it, but that would be an example of one. Another is I've met some merchants that are selling stuff, and I've bought some stuff. So yeah, I'd say the characterization seems on point with past Zelda games, and there's more characters than I expected.
Where do you get rupees?
I found a few rupees under like a rock. Like early on, I found 1 rupee under a rock, and I had 1 rupee for about 4 or 5 hours. But after that, I started finding more in like some of the bokoblin camps, and you'll get a fair amount of them from selling your materials and like your stuff that you cook. Like for right now, I still have 3 hearts. So
oh wow,
yeah. So whenever I have something that can cure like 7 hearts that I cooked, like I threw a bunch of stuff in a pot and made something great, I was like, I can either hold on to this forever, or I can sell it for 60 or 70 rupees. So that's how I made a decent amount of money. I don't think anyone would count this as a spoiler, because I think anyone who's played at least the plateau knows this, but you go through the shrines and you get rewarded with spirit orbs, and they're pretty much like a piece of heart. You get 4 of them and you can get a new heart container. But they're a little more interesting than the pieces of heart, because you can either get a new heart container or add to your stamina gauge. It's a very tough decision, because I died a lot and extra health would be really welcome. But at the same time, the stamina gauge is pretty much everything you do in the world. That's how you explore the world. If you have a bigger stamina gauge, you can climb further, you can run further, you can swim further. So I actually went with the stamina gauge upgrade for my first one, and I haven't gotten a second upgrade yet. So I'll probably go with hearts next, because I keep dying.
For someone who doesn't own a Wii U or a Switch, do you think that Zelda is a good enough reason to buy a Switch?
Boy, it's a little hard to say. I hesitate to say they should spend $300 for one game, but I do think the Switch is worth owning. It's pretty darn good right now. If you like adventure games, I mean, this is pretty much the top of the line right here. So I would not recommend missing out on Zelda. Even if you don't like adventure games, I think a lot of people would really enjoy this game. As long as you're up for the challenge, and as long as you're not too freaked out by games that use a lot of buttons and such and have kind of a steep learning curve, this is a very rewarding game, I feel. So I would definitely recommend it. And if you're on the fence about getting a Switch, go for it.
Is this the best Zelda game?
Well, it's too soon to call that, but I will say this: when I was playing, it starts at the bottom of the list of Zelda games, because by default, you got to start somewhere. That's where it starts. And as I've been playing, it's been kind of gradually boop 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 boop, kind of overtaking each Zelda, starting from the last one. Like, pretty early on, it overtook Spirit Tracks for me, and then it overtook Phantom Hourglass. So it's a few Zeldas in already. So I can confirm that unless something completely horrible happens, like it makes me go blind in the second half or whatever, this is not the worst Zelda by a long margin. It's at least several Zeldas from being the worst Zelda. So you got that, at least. I can guarantee it.
Yeah. You slap that in the box, Nintendo. It's not the worst Zelda. Better than Phantom Hourglass.
Woo! Okay, so I got Breath of the Wild, obviously, but I was also planning on getting Super Bomberman R. As we all know, because I made the video, I was like, you decide if I get Super Bomberman R. But here's the thing. So Amazon sold out of Bomberman, which means I couldn't get $10 off, and I was initially thinking about buying it because I could have gotten it for $40. And then I said, if it's below 55 review average, I don't have to get it if y'all say, I should get it. So come launch day, I was thinking, okay, do I have to spend $50 or not? And I checked the reviews, and of the reviews I could find, I averaged them out. It was 57.5%. It was just over the margin. So Do I still have to buy the game? Are y'all gonna give me a hard time? Because I don't want to buy a game with a 57.5% average. I mean, I like Bomberman, but I mean, it's probably gonna drop in price like in 2 weeks, and then I have 2 kids. They need education, and clearly they need What do you think, Chris?
I mean, personally,
Is someone gonna bust my chops for this? They're gonna. You promised.
maybe, but we should leave it up to the fans. So if you think Matthew should be able to get off the hook from buying Bomberman, post in the comments here. If not, also post in the comments here. So we're gonna, just because of the abnormally low reviews the game's been getting, we're gonna take another poll.
We'll do it like the gladiators do. They can give a thumb up or thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yep.
Is it thumbs up or thumb up?
Thumbs up would imply both thumbs.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess so. All right, so yeah, let me know if I still have to buy it or not.
And I'd say cut Matthew a little bit of slack because like the game has got pretty low reviews, you know. So
yeah. I did pick up Snipper Clips. I haven't gotten to try it yet, but I'm excited to.
Oh, cool. Did you buy the Zelda DLC?
Not yet, but I probably will.
All right. Well, thanks for your impressions, Matthew.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with some more Switch talk and probably some updates on Zelda because I will have played a bit of it by then.
Yeah.
And we'll get some updates from Matthew. Thanks for joining us for the 12 days of Switchmas, even though we only had like 8 of them.
We had a few little difficulties, but that's okay. We had a bunch of updates in a row, and you know it's tough to do. Now that Zelda and the Switch are out, I hope you all have a lot of fun playing them. So let us know what you think in the comments, and be sure to check back in on us next week. Happy gaming.
See you guys next week.